Thank you very much, Jerry. This has been quite an interesting conference and some very interesting speakers. Sarah, that was a very compelling story that you said. And I think that's important because, as we think about harm reduction, we should remember to keep the consumer front and center in our discussion. We can't forget that, we're doing this to solve a problem. And as we think about the problem of smoking, we should keep in mind all the potential solutions. I know, David, you talked about disruptive technologies, and clearly all the focus is around e-vapor and heat not burn. But let's not forget that, there are other options that are open, and as consumers look at the variety of options that are out there, let's give them as many choices as possible so that we can give them the options. And smokeless is one option that is often forgotten. I'm so glad that, many of the speakers earlier on kind of shined the light on smokeless tobacco products. And what I'm going to do today is talk about the U.S. smokeless tobacco opportunity that exists. So let me just get a feel of the room. How many people in this room know this is a global forum, right? So how many people in this room know about Altria? Okay, I see that there are some hands that are still, maybe people are still kind of waking up. So maybe I'll take a couple of minutes and just give you a little bit background about Altria. Altria is the market leader in the U.S. tobacco industry. And we have a number of operating companies. Our tobacco operating companies include Philip Morris USA, different than PMI, but we are going to be marketing IQOS, which is the heat not burn product, in the US once we get market authorization from FDA. Other tobacco operating companies include John Middleton and Nat Sherman that makes cigars, and US Smokeless Tobacco Company, which has been the market leader in smokeless tobacco products in the US. And last but not the least is Newmark, which is Altria's innovation company, and Newmark develops and markets e-vapor products for adult smokers and vapors. So that's a little bit about the background about Altria, who we are, and let me just get on with my presentations. So as I said earlier, I think we have to remember what is the problem that we are trying to solve. And everybody in this room will agree to the fact that, cigarette smoking is a significant public health problem. I think we all recognize that cigarette smoking is harmful. We also know that, for example, in the US, the Surgeon General has identified this as the single most preventable cause of morbidity and mortality. Single most cause of preventable morbidity and mortality. That's pretty powerful, right? We know that, I think Dr. Joe yesterday, he talked a little bit about all the morbidity and mortality that arises from smoking. People die from serious diseases like lung cancer, COPD, cardiovascular. So this is harmful. And the fact of the matter is that even smokers know that this is harmful. And they also are aware that quitting smoking is going to be beneficial for their health. Yet, in the US, there are 40 million adults that continue to smoke. Now, for those who are unable or unwilling to quit, I think we need to give them the options and the opportunities to select from a variety of options. And the good news is that there is this movement from the combustible products to the periphery of non-combustible. And today what I want to talk about is the 5 million adults in the US that use smokeless products. And particularly I want to draw your attention to something here. If you notice here, many of them also smoke. About half of these adults actually dual use cigarettes and use smokeless products. Therein, ladies and gentlemen, lies the harm reduction opportunity for us. There are about 2 to 3 million adults in the US that continue to smoke cigarettes despite adapting smokeless in their lifestyle. And if we can convince them to move to using exclusive smokeless tobacco product, I think we will have made an impact and a difference in the lives of these individuals. The interesting thing is that many of the adult smokers are willing to try alternative products. In fact, this is data from the PATH survey. PATH is the National Longitudinal Follow-up Survey that is commissioned by FDA. And you see that more than half of the adult smokers say that if a tobacco product were to make a claim that it's less risky, they're willing to give it a try. So half of the adult smokers are looking for alternatives. And we at Altria are doing our part by making available a variety of options. I think that's an important thing for all of us to remember, that I think one product, one category is not going to do it all. That's why we have a range of options available for the consumers to choose from. And in this non-combustible space, we have a range that includes inhalable products like e-vapor products, as well as the heat not burn products, and oral products. I think the oral products is a category that is often forgotten, but it can fulfill the needs of those who are looking for variety and different preferences for different people. And in the oral product category, we have Verve. Those of you who were not here yesterday, sorry. I talked a little bit about Verve, and if you want to hear more about it, come and see us at our booth. And the other set of oral products are the smokeless products that includes snus and traditional smokeless products. Those, as I said, there's a sizable population of users in the US. And I'm going to show you some data that shows that these products actually have a harm reduction opportunity. But we have yet to unleash the full potential of these products because people are misinformed. 90% of adults in the US think that smokeless tobacco is as or even more harmful than cigarettes. And this is data from the PATH survey, the survey that has been commissioned by FDA. And in the US, 90%. And the more compelling thing is that a quarter of them believe that smokeless tobacco is even more harmful than cigarettes. Can you imagine cigarettes, which you're inhaling all the toxicants into the lung, and smokeless, which is a non-combustible product? Consumers think, a quarter of the consumers think that smokeless tobacco is more harmful than cigarettes. That is a problem. Our consumers in the US are misinformed, and we are doing our part of correcting this misinformation. So we have submitted a modified risk tobacco product application. For many of you who know, FDA has created this regulatory pathway for US manufacturers to communicate the information, the risk information about its products. So, we have submitted a modified risk tobacco product application earlier this year on this product, which has been on the market since 1822. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a product that has been on the market for almost 2 centuries. We have almost 200 years of consumer usage information. We have decades of epidemiology on this. This has a proven track record of a product that has far less risky than cigarettes. Yet, you can see that consumers, many of them think that this is more harmful than cigarettes. So we're doing our part to correct that misinformation and provide consumers with the accurate information. And the basis of this application is the epidemiology, and we have actually further added to that knowledge, and we have conducted our own analysis, and I want to share some of that with you. So what did we do? In the US, there are many national surveys that are conducted. And so we used data from 2 national surveys. The first one is the National Health Interview Survey. I'm going to abbreviate that as NHIS. And the second survey is the National Longitudinal Mortality Study, which is NLMS. So those are the 2 abbreviations you'll see in my slides. And these surveys, we took the survey respondents. There were thousands of survey respondents, which included many, many thousands of smokeless tobacco users from many years. And in the US, actually, this is a very interesting data set. What the CDC does is it takes the individuals that were participating in these surveys and then links their mortality to the survey responses. So if somebody was a smokeless tobacco user, and if the death occurred in these individuals, the cause of death is linked to their survey. So this is called as a linked mortality analysis. So we looked at the survey respondents and the data from close to 300,000, 400,000 individuals with thousands of smokers. And this linked mortality analysis, we've written this up and in the process of publishing that. And I'm going to show you some of the data from the study. So the first slide I'm going to show you is, let me just ground you on the data, and then I want you to walk away with 3 key points. First, I want to just draw your attention to what we did here. So we estimated the mortality hazards ratios from the survey analysis, right? And the first column is the list of various mortalities. All-cause mortality, for those of you who are familiar with the epidemiology would know that it kind of covers the whole kind of gestalt of multiple causes of mortality. It's kind of the overall general representation. We also looked at diseases of the heart and malignant neoplasms. This column reflects the data for smokers, and the last column reflects data from smokeless tobacco users. So here are the 3 key points I want you to walk away from this. First, let's focus on smokers. If you compare the mortality hazards ratio of smokers, it's no surprise, right, that there is a greater risk of death in smokers compared to never tobacco use. And you can see that, with all-cause, with cardiovascular, and with cancer, there is a significantly increased risk of death compared to never tobacco use for smokers. That's the first point. Second point, now let's look at smokeless tobacco users. Well, lo and behold, if you look at all these data points, each of these data points represents the mortality hazard ratio, and the error bars is the 95% confidence interval. There is actually no difference, no significant difference in these individuals compared to never tobacco users. Now, mind you, we're not saying that smokeless tobacco is risk-free. What this data shows us that there is no significant increase in mortality hazards in smokeless tobacco users in the U.S. compared to never tobacco users. That's the second point. The third point that I want to draw your attention to is the fact that you see consistency of evidence across the 2 surveys. What do I mean by that? Remember I told you that there were 2 surveys we looked at, the NHIS, the National Health Interview Survey, and the NLMS, and the symbols are shown, squares and circles. The evidence is consistent across these 2 surveys. What this shows that across, thousands of smokeless tobacco users that we have looked at, there is no significant increase in mortality in these individuals compared to never tobacco use. And you see it consistent across the years in both the surveys. Now you might ask that, this is, epidemiology, and of course epidemiology is a blunt tool, so how does that give us comfort around the product that we submitted the application on in Copenhagen? Well, the answer is that during the periods of the survey that were conducted, Copenhagen had more than 50% of the market share. So it generally is representative of that specific product. Nevertheless, I think this is a very compelling point that I want us to all keep in mind as we go to the next slide, which now we're going to drill down a little bit deeper into the specific cancer mortalities. And this slide is set up in the same way as before. We're looking at the specific cancer mortality outcomes, and then smokers and smokeless tobacco users. And in this slide, also, I want you to walk away with 3 key takeaways. First, look at the mortality hazard ratios for the various organ cancers for smokers. Of note, the respiratory cancers, significant increase. No surprise, right? Because you're inhaling all the toxicants. So it's not surprising that you see a significant increase in the respiratory cancers. So that's the first point, obvious thing. The second point is, now let's look at the smokeless tobacco users. For only 2 of the cancers, we could even generate statistical estimates of the mortality hazard ratio. And that was not significantly different compared to never tobacco use. And for the other 2 cancers, we could not even compute the hazard ratio because the number of deaths were so far lower that there was statistical uncertainty. And besides, CDC will not even allow us to report a number because of confidentiality issues. So amongst the thousands of smokeless tobacco users that we investigated, there were not even measurable deaths for oral cancer or for esophageal cancer. That's pretty compelling, right? And then the third key point that I want to draw your attention to is the fact that, and in fact, many consumers and actually even many healthcare professionals don't believe that smoking causes oral cancer. That's an often overlooked phenomenon that people just don't believe. And what we find is that, and this is something that has also been reported by the Surgeon General, that cigarette smoking causes oral cancer. And contrary to the long-held misbelief that smokeless tobacco causes oral cancer, what we found is that amongst the thousands of smokeless tobacco users, there weren't even any reportable deaths from oral cancer in smokeless tobacco users. This brings to question this long-held belief, I think it's a misbelief, that smokeless tobacco causes oral cancer. So all in all, I think if we can just keep in mind the 3 key things, that, smoking, increased risk, smokeless tobacco, no increased risk, and then the fact that, the oral cancer, the differential between cigarettes and smokeless. So let me end, as I'm seeing signs from Jerry, let me end by summarizing. So, we have seen in this presentation that, there continues to be this prevailing misperception about smokeless tobacco products, and people still think that they are equally or more harmful than cigarettes. And we have done our part, I think, by submitting this application. And we hope that, and we expect that, once consumers slowly overcome their long-held misbeliefs and start understanding the impact of the differential risk, they will be switching completely. And remember, I showed you the dual users who are still using cigarettes and smokeless, and if we can convince them and move them to switch to exclusive use, that will be a tremendous benefit to those individuals. And once we correct these wildly held misperceptions, hopefully consumers will be able to make more informed decisions about their product choices. So before I end, I want to leave you folks with a parting thought. So, we as market leaders have done our part by, using the regulatory pathway, by informing consumers about the accurate risk differential. But I think that, government and public health also has a role to play in this. And I think that, if we want consumers to overcome this deep, long-standing misbelief about smokeless tobacco, they need to get consistent, accurate messaging from all the stakeholders, including industry, public health, and government. Thank you very much.